Welcome to this strategy video for Axis and Allies, Spring 1942, 2nd edition. In this version of the game, Russia takes the first turn. Now, the Russian philosophy is to be the bulwark against which the forces of Germany break. So, what your primary objective is, in order to accomplish that, is to make sure that you stay in the game long enough for your allies to mount a joint offensive against Germany. So that would be Britain and the United States. What Russia needs to do is to just hold their ground until you, combined with your partners, can take out Germany. What you want to not focus on is trying to attack Germany by yourself, because if you do that, you're going to get overwhelmed. Russia does not have the IPCs to take on Germany by themselves. They only start with 24 IPCs, whereas Germany starts with 40 and has a massive amount of units on the board when the game starts. So in order to accomplish these goals, you have to hold on to some key territories. Now, Russia itself is obviously important because it contains your capital, Moscow. And Karelia, SSR, is somewhat important as well. It contains an industrial complex and is worth 2 IPCs, also the victory city, Leningrad. The Caucasus, or I would say your second most valuable territory, because it's worth 4 IPCs, which is the second highest in your entire continent, and it also has a industrial complex on it which is adjacent to Russia itself. So whoever controls this can build 4 units directly adjacent to Moscow. So you really want to have that under your control, otherwise the Germans can potentially overwhelm you. West Russia itself is also an important territory because it is adjacent to Moscow. So if the Germans control that, on their turn, they can potentially blitz tanks through it, and hit Moscow itself. So if you control this, Moscow is essentially safe. It also gives you easy access to several other territories. If you notice, unlike Russia, West Russia is adjacent to Karelia and the Caucasus, where Russia is only adjacent to the Caucasus. This is one of the reasons that you want to care more about the Caucasus than Karelia, as far as defending Moscow goes, because you've got Archangel between Karelia and Moscow. So if the Germans take this and start building tanks, or tanks would actually be able to blitz through, but if they start building infantry, which they'll need to eat up the manpower you're going to have here, if they want their tanks to survive, they're going to have to move twice. So that'll really help you. Karelia is also in a good spot for the British to help you out with landings. So one of the things you can try and do is turn this into a dead zone for the Germans. Anyway, that's enough for overall strategy in Europe right now. Let's just take a brief look over here. Russia's not really going to be doing much on the Eastern Front. Your main goal here is just going to be hold this territory right here with a few infantry so that the Japanese don't just start rampaging through here and taking all your stuff. So let's take a look at purchases right now. There's a lot of purchasing options with Russia, but the safest one to go with is just spend all 24 IPCs on these 8 infantry. That's just going to give you the most hit points you can buy, and that'll just help you tank the German counterattack that's inevitably coming after yours. So now let's get into combat moves. So now for the combat phase, the strategy I'm going to go over is called the Ukraine Offensive. I think this is a good strategy for new players as it's very safe. And there's 2 different versions of this strategy. The one I'm going to do is the strafe. So the way this works is every single unit that can attack the Ukraine is going to combat move into the Ukraine this turn. So that's this tank, in fact everything from the Caucasus. That's going to be this plane. These 2 tanks from Russia are going to double move through the Caucasus themselves into the Ukraine. This plane from Karelia is going to come here. And then now we've got this stack of units here completely overwhelming the Ukraine. And everything else is going to go into West Russia. So we're going to take the 4 infantry and artillery from Moscow, put them into West Russia. We're going to just abandon Karelia completely and take all of these units into West Russia. So we're just going to totally overwhelm West Russia because we really need to take that on our turn right here, so that we're going to take Archangel as well, so that the Germans do not have a striking force and distance of Moscow. So we're going to just devote everything we have to taking these two places. It's critical that we attack these two places on this turn in order to defend Moscow. We don't really care about Karelia that much because if you do the math, no matter what you send here, the Germans can overwhelm it. And the more you send there, in fact, the more it's going to entice them to do exactly that and just crush your army. So what this is going to do is help protect our army by making the best use of it as possible and only rolling in good odds. So we have really good odds in both of these battles, and that's what you want when you're playing Russia. You don't want to go into battles that are kind of 50-50 or slightly in your favor. You really want to go and pick your battles carefully because you don't have that much to work with. So you don't just want to throw away your units worthlessly. So what we're going to do here, in this battle, we're going to strafe. In the other version of the strategy, you'll send a different number of units. But what we're going to do here is just do one round of combat in the Ukraine, and then we're going to retreat to the Caucasus. And that's just going to wipe out a few guys, which is going to decrease the amount of hit points that they're going to bring into West Russia, because they're either going to want to attack the Caucasus or West Russia after this, because that's where all of your forces are. And by taking away these 3 infantry and keeping most of our guys alive, that's going to really help us defend against the counterattack, because we're going to start eating into their tanks and planes and whatnot if they have fewer infantry to come into West Russia with. And if you notice, the only infantry in range of West Russia right now are in fact these 3 guys right here on Belorussia, right? There's no other infantry that can walk into West Russia after we take it right now. So that's really, really good for us, because that's going to allow us to eat into the German meat, right? Their planes and tanks. So let me go over the Ukraine here specifically. So what I just did was attack with all of these units, and I wrote a program to help calculate the odds. And in this battle here, with 3 infantry, 3 tanks, 2 fighters, and an artillery against 3 infantry, a tank, a fighter, and an artillery, you have a 54.07% chance of scoring 4 hits. So that'll take out the infantry and the artillery, leaving them only with this, most likely. They have the odds of scoring 2 hits, so you'll lose 2 infantry. So we're doing pretty good here. That leaves you with 3 tanks, 2 planes, and an infantry. And we're going to leave the 2 fighters in the Ukraine for now, because they have to retreat on the non-combat move. But everything else will retreat to the Ukraine itself in order to put up a good defense. Now let me go over West Russia. So in West Russia, the odds are overwhelmingly in your favor. So you've got a 53.13 chance of scoring 4 hits. So that'll take out 3 infantry and an artillery, leaving only this tank. And in this battle, the defenders have a 60.49% chance of scoring 2 hits. So we'll just take out 2 infantry. And remember, these are just the most likely scenarios. It's possible to swing either way. We're just going to go with what's most likely for you. And then that just leaves the tank, which is 50-50. So we'll just give it to the Germans in this case, and take away the tank and an infantry. So now you've got a pretty good force here in West Russia that's going to really put up a good fight when the Germans come at you on their turn. And that's it for your combat moves. So now let's get into the non-combat phase. So, in the non-combat move phase, what we're going to do first is we're going to land these 2 fighters from the Ukraine back into the Caucasus, right? So that's going to put up some pretty solid defense there. We've got 3 tanks, 2 fighters, an infantry, and an artillery right now. And they don't have much in range. There are no infantry in the range of this. And so at most they'll be able to send in fighters and tanks, which they really don't want to do because that's just going to eat into their really powerful units. So this will make sure that the Caucasus, which is important because the 4-point industrial complex is well defended. Now, West Russia, on the other hand, is a little squishy at the moment. We've got some good artillery there and infantry, but we've only got the 1 tank, and they've got 3 infantry right here they can send in, and a whole bunch of other stuff. That's not a huge deal because we just want to make sure they don't control West Russia on their turn, not necessarily that we hold it. The things we want to hold are the Caucasus and Russia, and Karelia if we can, but right now we're just not going to be able to do that. So let's look at other non-combat moves. We're going to move these guys here. We're going to move this here. Alright, that's going to put up a nice little wall against the Japanese. They can still take you down if they want, but there's really no reason for them to waste themselves against that. This guy here, you've got options. You can move him into the Caucasus if you want to put up a defense. But one thing I like to do is put him here. Right, so this will help defend the flying tigers right here against the Japanese attack. And that plane is going to be really useful because it can defend India and it can defend Moscow. So I think that's a much better move, and you'll see why we don't move into here in a second. So this guy, we're just going to move him into Russia as a defender. These guys, I like to swing down here because that gives them options on where they're going to go next. If you take them into Volga or Archangel, that kind of limits their mobility. Although you could take them to Volga if you're thinking about getting up here. But I think that's the better spot to go. And then the submarine will go link up with the British fleet right here. And that'll allow us to use it or not use it in that combat, depending on how it goes. So that's just a good option because it'll still be in range of this transport right here, right? 1, 2. So the Germans won't be able to leave it by themselves, which honestly would be stupid anyway because a plane would probably hit it or something. But it's good to keep in range of everything in the Baltic Sea and whatnot. So that's it for non-combat moves. Let's go right into the place units phase. So we've got our 8 infantry here. We can put 4 of them in the Caucasus, which we're going to do because the Germans want to attack that. That's a good position for our forces to be in to continue going against Ukraine, right? If we build them all in Russia, we're behind this wall of West Russia right here. This is a very good spot, and we need to control it. We're not going to put anything in Karelia, obviously, because we're effectively abandoning it. So we're going to put everything else in Russia, so that next turn, they're ready to move back into West Russia if it gets taken, or reinforce it. So we know that Karelia is going to fall, but that's not a big deal, because you're not going to lose a single unit over it. All your units are down here, well protected. These guys are not going to get attacked. The Germans would be crazy to attack them. So at most, you're going to lose only what's in West Russia this turn, which is not really that much, and it's going to pack a punch. So I think this is a really good opening to do for beginners because it's very safe. You do lose Karelia, but that's not a huge deal. There are other openings you can do that are less safe, right? And if you get really good odds on your dice, then you can do some serious damage against the Germans. But remember, Russia's philosophy is just to hold out until your allies can come in, and this is a really good way to hold out against the Germans. So, thanks for watching this first turn strategy for Russia. Next turn, I'll get into Germany and what they can do given this situation. Now remember, there's lots of different things that Russia might do, so it's going to be hard to really show you complete openings because we don't really know what the state of the board is as we're going to get into further and further turns. But I'm just going to show you some things that I think are good in this version of the game. Okay, thanks for watching, and have a good day.